Welcome to Local Game Group. I'm your host, Patrick Marlette, your local game guy, and today we'll be discussing Perona for OP06. If you are looking for a guide to this new leader just before OP06 drops, or you are looking to build this after you pull that AA leader, and congratulations to you, this will be the perfect guide for you, as we'll be discussing the leader itself, the deck and general strategy, all of the notable inclusions, as well as notable exclusions, any flex spots in my version of the list, and of course, the play lines for the deck before getting to some gameplay for you. And on that note, this is solely a blueprint for Perona. This is not the only version of this list you can play, and if you happen to be a Perona enthusiast yourself, let us know your deck in the comments below. As a matter of fact, you can copy and paste it so other players can play it over on OPTCG Sim, where we'll be testing today. And of course, if you want to test my version of the deck, you'll find it in the description down below. Let's start by discussing our leader, Perona. She has 5,000 power, 4 life, and activate main once per turn. Choose one of the following effects. Rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less, or up to one of your opponent's characters gets -1 cost during this turn. Sadly, unlike Sakazuki, we can't do both of these effects in one turn. However, the activate main gives us a lot of flexibility over how we manipulate her effects during the turn. Being in green-black also offers a lot of synergy for that top effect in particular. The bottom level reduction effect, I would say, is used the least often of the two, as the tap down is really great for pressuring your opponent's characters and or tapping down blockers to get big hits in. I think that Perona still has a place in the competitive scene, and she's actually done quite well overseas. So here's to hoping this list can also pull its own today. And I've made several versions of this deck. This just happens to be my favorite. I think we've all collectively agreed on Navy and Donquixote Pirates being the best route of approach when it comes to Perona. And on that note, I think it's probably important we discuss our searchers and draw utilities. So to start, we have brand new. This is sort of the creme de la creme so far as Navy searchers is concerned outside of blue. Of course, we get a new blue searcher for naval cards, but you get to look at the top 3 of your deck, put a Navy card in your hand, and the rest in your trash. Now, this is actually quite useful in a black-based deck because of that new 8-cost Gecko Moria. This is fuel to that fire. So anything we get in our trash at this point is great for recoverable cards like Rebecca, Mansherry, or cards that require us move cards from our trash to our deck to get some effect. Say Rob Lucci. However, you'll find that none of those cards are in this list, and that's because we are trying to stay as much as we can within Navy and Donquixote Pirates for this build. Next up, we have Baby 5, who is a different type of searcher in the same vein of Momo and Bonnie, who lets you activate main, pay 1, rest this character, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find said subtyping, and put 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. She has few targets, where brand new has 22 targets in this list. She has 17, and that includes the rest of her baby 5s in the deck. So a very small number of searchable targets. Generally speaking, I don't like to add searchers for subtypes that are less than 16 of, so far as quantity is concerned, in the deck. I find the hit rate is too unsuccessful, and that's whether you're searching from 3 all the way up to 5. So Baby 5 just hits that threshold, and she's important to have on the list for a couple of reasons. She has a searchable 2K, a great bomb, and a really good blocker in this deck. So there's all the reasons to include her, plus we have a lot of double searchable targets you'll find as we play the deck today. So far as our draw utilities are concerned, we have a handful in the list, some that are commonplace, some not so much, and Kuzan is one that's been around since OP02, the introduction of black, and is such a great card now with Gecko Moria. As this game's evolved, there have been a lot of new cards printed that are 2-in-1s. You get a body, you get to KO a thing, you get to bottom a thing. There's a gross amount of removal in the game of One Piece right now. So the odds are likely that when you cast 4-cost Kuzan on your turn 2, say you're off the play, that he will not stick. And that's okay, because he's replacing himself, and you do get to get him back later on if you have an 8-cost Gecko Moria in your list, which is a playline I recommend you try to build for. This is a really good card if it does stick. Again, 9 out of 10 times, Kuzan will get removed, and that's okay. But if he does stick, he pairs extremely well with Perona. Next up, we have a Nupe, who's a really interesting draw utility for Thriller Bark Pirates. You can play this card in other decks, although it will not be as useful. On play and on death, you get to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. As I mentioned earlier with Brand New, we want to fill up our grave. This is great. Sometimes you're looking for a solution. This is the card that's going to help you find that solution, particularly on your 10 Dawn turn where you know a Gecko Moria would be amazing. Getting to dig too deep into your list will help you hit one of those 4 if you hadn't yet already at this point in the game. I really like this card. It's not always going to do the thing for you, but it's really good filtering for your hand, especially in those early stages of the game where you might not have plays, particularly if you're on playing this list, that is turn 1 Dawn. You'll find that the curve for this list, it really favors playing off play, right? So starting with a even number of Dawn. One final note on Nupe, it is a flex spot for the deck. You're not going to see this in every version of this list. However, I like it as an include for the deck. I find that card quality effects are really important in any TCG, and one that we can leverage to great effect with our leader here is one I want to include, but we'll discuss notable exclusions and what you might alternate out for Nupe a little bit later. Lastly, so far as draw utilities are concerned, we have another flex spot in the deck, and we'll get into that in a few, but she's a draw utility that lets you draw provided there is a 0 cost in play. So the odds of this are very unlikely when you can play her naturally. So generally speaking, you're going to want to discard her as a 2KC or 2K counter and bring her back later with Gecko Moria. This in tandem with Kuzan or even the -1 off of Perona is going to be effectively enough to get a 0 cost in play, especially if you're playing against a deck that leverages a lot of early game searchers that are 1-drops. There's a lot of value here, in my opinion, so far as this 2K counter is concerned. And I actually like this over some of the other 2K counter options, but we can discuss those a little bit later. I found that I get a lot of draw out of this. There are other 2 cost characters you could bring back with Gecko Moria, but sometimes you just don't see the Brand New or you don't see the Rocinante, and this is your best option. It being on the tail end of a counter is good in my book. Good enough for her to be included, at least in my version. Speaking of 2K counters, this is very easy to get through. We have 10 total in the deck. I would say that 8 to 12 is the average you'll see in a lot of lists. It really depends on what that deck is doing, but I suggest you start, if you're building a list yourself, with 12 2K counters or 2KCs, that's just what I'm going to call them from here on out, and then going down from there once you realize what searches you have that are relevant for those subtypings. And Suru is by far one of the best 2KCs in the game for Black, and she has been since her inclusion in OP02. If you don't have a playset of her, pick up a playset of her via the link in the description at tcgplayer.com. You don't have to, but if you do, I'll get like a nickel, so that's cool. Virgo is our next 2K counter. Why do we use him? Solely because he's double searchable. That's it. I don't think this card's good. I don't see people play this card. I don't play this card. If you do leverage it, obviously the Dawn 1 can't be KO'd in battle is actually quite good. It just means that they're going to have to use some form of effect to remove it off the board, but generally you're going to use it as a 2K counter, and that's fine. You can obviously bring this back with things like Rebecca and Mancherry as well to have another 2K counter that way. Again, we're not using those in this deck, so far as synergies are concerned with this, it's really just the searchability of this card. That's all we care about. Lastly, we have Makino. She, as I said, is a flex spot. The alternatives, in my opinion, are, let's say, easily what people will turn to in OP06 are Tashigi. And Tashigi we can look at really quickly. She's from the starter deck, Sakazuki, which is kind of expensive now, but if you have copies of this, you can switch Makino out for this. I personally like if you can't afford that or you just want a different option, and in some instances a better option in my opinion, I would say One-Legged Soldier is fantastic. Again, this is playable off of Gecko Moria. Not everything needs to be okay, but you can play this sideways, rested, and activate it to go -3 on something, letting you tap down that, I don't know, 7-cost Big Mom with Perona and get some hits in. Like, there's a lot of good play options with One-Legged Soldier, and it plays really well into the general strategy of the deck. So as a 2K counter is concerned, it's fantastic in my opinion. Lastly, I would recommend, if you don't want to use Makino, Khalifa. Khalifa is really good. Again, this is that Anupe effect, draw 2, trash 2, but it's also tacked on to a 4/4 body. So 1 Dawn to go vanilla on a 5k leader, 2 for your 6k leaders, right? So that's practically Luffy moving forward. Whitebeard's sort of been phased out, but you'll still see Whitebeard played, obviously. However, she also lets you go -2 on an opposing character. So if you play this, or if you play this off of Gecko Moria, this is a great way to tap down larger things with Perona. I like Khalifa a lot. I won't say which of these 3 is better include. I'm clearly using Makino, so you know how I feel. I think that Khalifa, though, can definitely fit into that same slot. Next up, we have our KO effects, and there are only 8 in the list, and I'll say that this is a small number relative to other competitive decks right now, and that's just because we don't have great options that work well with these subtypings. And you can include Rob Lucci in the list, but I find it doesn't synergy well with the deck outside of some combo plays you can obviously establish with it. I would rather have the searchable options. Ryuma not being searchable, mind you, but it does play better with our leader's effect, and we'll get to Ryuma in a second, but it's practically X-Drake, who's 5 cost, 6k power, KO arrested a 4 or less character on play. A lot of times you want your KO effects to be attached to on play. It's, again, rare, like I was saying with Kuzan, that when you play that thing on curve, you could play like Green Virgo, let's say, in this list, and you can play him on curve, but it's rare that Virgo will stick. Like, KO one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less when attacking. Things like this, things like Nico Robin, things like Ulti, they don't see as much play because of, again, the sheer amount of removal. You really want it to happen on play to at least leverage it the once, if not at all, with cards like Virgo. So things like X-Drake, and again, like this is double searchable. Like there's every reason to play a Virgo, that's why I brought it up. However, odds are likely that you're not going to be able to use that effect in most games. It really depends on your matchup. Like against Yellow, they don't have that much early game removal outside of Gudatsu, so there are use cases. However, you generally want your KO effects on play, and X-Drake gets you there, as well as Ryuma. So same stat line, 6k power, 1 less, no counter power, however. It's not searchable, but on play and KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. If your opponent's smart, they'll avoid the on KO effect of this. But again, it will get you 2 kills if you're able to counter out of an attack and force them to attack with one of their characters that's 4 and under. Or it doesn't, and, you know, Ryuma just eats it, and that's fine, because it lets you do this on play. It's a 4 for 6 that synergies extremely well with our leader. It also happens to be Thriller Pirates, which we don't have a searcher for now, but may be relevant in the future. And lastly, before we start discussing play lines for this list, what you're going to look for in an opening hand, whether you're on play or off play, that is the turn 1 player or the player receiving play, 2 Dawn, draw a card, all that, are our notable exclusions. So everything I've mentioned, Anupe, Makino, those are really the 2 flex spots, at least for this version of the list. You can take them out in any quantity for the 2k counters I mentioned earlier, or utilities like Sabo. This is not a 4 of in this deck, generally speaking, but you've likely seen this in a few decks. It's been a fan favorite. It doesn't suit my playstyle, however, but if you're unfamiliar, it's a 5 for 6k blocker. There are a ton of great ones these days. This is just one that came out recently. OP04 is, I guess, not that recent, but it came out not that long ago and is still quite relevant. But on the play, it just makes sure that your characters can't be KO'd by effects. Draw 2, trash 2. So that effect, the draw 2, trash 2, probably my favorite part of it, if I want to be honest. Maybe I just see too many Sakazukis, or blue in general, but when you're able to bottom a thing, then the KO effects of cards doesn't really matter, right? So you just pivot from your Rob Lucci to your Hound Blaze and get around this. However, it is very good against opposing lists that have trigger KO effects, much like Yellow, and or removal by way of black KO effect, and or green, its rested KO effect, or purple KO effect with something like a 9-cost Kaido, which is probably most relevant for that color. There's also Poly, there's a few more things that say KO, but anytime it says KO, This is really useful. I would say that this card is best if you're trying to turtle up with this list. You'll have probably a few more blockers than I do, and you'll likely be running 8 cost Kid. In versions of this deck with that build, Sabo's great. I think Sabo's mostly, when I've played it in this version of the deck, Sabo's mostly just a 1k counter. And because we lack those core black cards for recovering, as I've mentioned throughout this video, the Mancheries, the Rebeccas, we're not going to see this utility after we've discarded it for the 1k counter, right? So it's kind of a wasted utility in this list, where Anupe is going to do the same thing but earlier for us and just give us a better hand moving forward to our turn 2, turn 3, to our end game. And to me, that's a little bit more important. Also, Anupe lets us do that twice. Frankly, I found that your opponents aren't too concerned about Hound blazing this if there are better options, and I mean Anupe particularly. So once this gets an attack in, you'll put 2 Dawn in this and swing, or you'll use, you know, Perona to tap something weak down and swing with Anupe. You're going to get the death trigger on this in most all instances. So you'll see 2 more cards over Sabo, and this is very generally speaking, but I found I get 2 more draws out of this card than I will ever, you know, equivalently see with Sabo. So I like Anupe more than this, but you can switch them out for this, or you can use... This is one I'm like, you know, I see people play, and I'm not a huge fan of. We already have a lot of no K counters, and this is the other thing we didn't really discuss, but you'll notice that we have the Kuzans, the Ryumas, the Doflamingos, the Gecko Morias. We have a lot of no KCs in the deck. And that's not really great, in my opinion. You don't want to see too many of these cards, otherwise you're going to eat hits you don't have to take. And if Brook was in the list, we'd have to eat a whole lot more hits. But it's a 6 for 6k, which is a bad rate. Obviously, there are things that are, let's say Rebecca, 4 for 0, but at least she's a blocker on the back end, right? So this is a bad rate for an attacker, but let's move on from that. On play, choose one. You really just looking at that top effect, although you can muck up Rob Lucci plays an opposing list if you use the bottom effect, but put up to one of your opponent's characters the cost of 4 or less into their trash. It doesn't matter whether they're rested or standing. Perona's effect is largely irrelevant here, so you'll use the -1 to maybe hit a 5 and under, one of those great 5k, or 5 cost rather, blockers potentially. And again, there are a ton of them. Queen, the Sabo I mentioned earlier. This is a cool way to KO a thing, but not really. Personally, I'm more excited for EBO1 Brook, who is an absolute house, though that's not a clear 1-to-1 comparison. That's a 3 for 4k as opposed to a 6 for 6k. Very different effects, but I find that Brook to be really good and potentially worth a spot in this Perona list or a future version of this deck. But it's important to note that this does skirt around on KO effects or things that would otherwise avoid, you know, being KO'd, because it's just trashing the card, right? So yes, it's good in that sense. No, I don't want to include it in this version of the deck, but you're more than welcome to. And lastly, we have 4-cost Perona. So 4-cost Perona, I'll just say, not my favorite include for this deck. I find that it's matchup dependent on whether this on play is going to be effective or not. Generally, I would say that this is sort of a Gecko Moria card than it is a Perona card. You don't mind playing this out early, and you don't mind playing it back out after it dies repeatedly. Again, 5 or more cards in hand isn't that easy to hit, but this is a great range of effects. I honestly think that this is one of the best 2KCs in the game right now, and it does combo really well with 8-cost Gecko Moria. Moving on, let's discuss playlines before illustrating how Perona should definitely be played. If you happen to be on the play, which is again, not what you want to do, I highly recommend you start off play if you can. That is starting with 2 Dawn, drawing a card. It just plays better with our curve, you'll find, as you look over the deck and as we play today. But Baby 5, if you're on play, is your best course of action. You do not want to just rip a Suru if you have 1 Dawn available. It's not a good play. If you're off play, you're really looking for a hand that contains Brand New or Nupe. Both of these cards are really good turn 1s off play. Again, filtering and searching. Amazing effects, right? One will let you go from 6 to 6 cards in hand, brand new. Sometimes you miss, and that's okay. The other is just going to fill up your grave and give you a fresh hand, right? A portion of that hand. Turn 2, if you're on 3 Dawn, you're going to want to play Rocinante into Baby 5. It's funny how the subtypes kind of play well with one another, but playing this on turn 2 with 3 Dawn allows you to use Baby 5's effect, and obviously, if you haven't seen this Rocinante, it's very good with rested characters. So whether you elect to block and or use its effect to keep Baby 5 alive, you'll probably want to keep Baby 5 alive, especially if you give them bigger threats to concern themselves with or just remove their board and are just able to keep Baby 5 around. If you're effectively drawing like 2 cards with her, I say she's more than paid for herself. Even just the 1 is fantastic, but that's what you'll want to do if you have 3 Dawn. If you have 4 Dawn, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can Ryuma. It's usually going to, you know, underperform at this stage, but it's fine. I would say that I would prefer to Kuzan if it's in hand, if both of those options are there, and just wait out a better Ryuma play. But, you know, do what you will. We'll do what we have to as well in just a few. But we also have Borsalino to play. I don't generally like to play out blockers unless I'm forced to. That's just my play style. So you'll likely see me hold Borsalinos and just discard them. I like playing Borsalino late game or off a Gecko Moria. But if we don't have any of those options, which would be horrible, you could just use Perona to go -1 level on a thing and filter this out, Makino, or you could double down on Brand New and Anupe, or you could Dawn up a previously played Brand New and Anupe, attack for 5k, swing with Perona. Plenty of options in the 4 Dawn phase. Turn 3 with 5 Dawn opens up X-Drake, and of course the Ryuma, the Kuzan, the Borsalino, the double plays we've already mentioned. So far as 6 Dawn is concerned, there's nothing new in this stage outside of those same options as well, but X-Drake is also available for you at this phase. It's a good option and one that will play, again, very well with Perona's ability. Turn 4, 7 Dawn. Let's not talk about turn 4 with 7 Dawn. It's an idle turn, let's just say that. But if you have 8 Dawn, well, Gecko Moria is there for you. And we've likely just trashed a bunch of cards for their 2k counter power. We've likely trashed some cards with Brand New and Anupe. We have a lot of options, hopefully, in our grave to be fueled by Gecko Moria. This is what you want to be doing on turn 4 if it's available to you. Otherwise, big sad. You're just going to be really upset. Obviously, we don't have any searchers for this, so, you know, I'm not going to say you should try to start the game with this in hand, but hopefully you've pulled it off life at this point or have drawn into it at this point. You'll want to keep at least 1 copy in hand if you pull it. Do not mull for a hand that has Gecko Moria and wait for turn 4, the ideal turn 4. That's just not how you should be playing. However, turn 5, 9 Dawn. Again, it's a Gecko Moria turn for players that started on the play. Obviously, you know, we were really looking to turn 4 Gecko Moria into the Kuzan that likely died, and then using Kuzan to bring a level down, tap that thing down, play a 10 cost Doflamingo. You'll see the synergies are there for these bombs to just start dropping and really mucking up our opponent's board. This is really good for locking out leaders, but it's also really good for locking out bigger things if you're able to pair it in tandem with a Kuzan, right? So, man, really, really cool synergies in the late game. But from here, I think we can just go ahead and illustrate how the deck is played. You've been waiting for it. I've been waiting for it. Let's get some gameplay in. So this is not what I would consider a meta deck, but it should be a fun list to illustrate our leader with. So this hand is fine. We're going to see a lot of 4 cost things with Arlong, so I actually don't mind keeping this. And they elected to go first, which makes sense with Arlong, so we'll keep this. We're going to get to draw a card. You know, we don't have a turn 1 play here that I love. Rocinante's fine, but okay. Remember, I didn't say we really want to do Rocinante turn 1, but it's fine turn 1. It's fine turn 1. We have a lot of removal for what's coming at us with Arlong, so I'm happy with that play. We'll probably take this attack. It's worth saving Rocinante if we can for later. Ooh, well, this does change things, doesn't it? We don't want to kill Kikunojo when we have 3 or less life. So maybe it does make sense to either use our 0 cost event here and or counter out, or just block with Rocinante. And I think we can safely block with Rocinante, and that's just fine in this case. I would rather save our tricks for later. And the only good clear target for whoever wins this war would be the Ryuma. We don't generally like getting rid of our counter cards for zero cost events, but it's not always the case. Yeah, we'll rest this down. Yeah, we'll play this and we'll kill that. And we'll attack. They'll probably take it. This Arlong has a lot of trigger effects, so they'll probably be reaching for some now. This might be a Sanji. I was literally about to say that. Yeah, so, you know, they're going to look for all of these trigger playable characters. The deck is pretty much trigger dot deck for a lot of players. That's not necessarily how I like to play my version of Arlong, and you can see my version of Arlong on this channel, but yeah, we do use Sanji, I believe, in that list. All right, this is practical. Sure. When opponent's leaders are, okay. Rested leaders cannot attack, that's okay. So we'll probably take this and that's fine. They're shedding hand here, so we're gonna wanna work on their board. Wow, all the Ryumas. All the Ryumas, folks. All the Ryumas and like no bombs. And so we're really hoping to hit some bombs in the next few. I like X-Drake in hand here because it is a 1k counter, though we have options. I think what's smart is probably just to tap down this Arlong and force an attack on that. Hopefully they'll use Sanji to block, right? So we'll do this. And we can go 2k over and still play a 4k and be fine. Mind you, if we do this and they don't block, then, you know, we just play Borsellino, and that's okay too. So let's do this. If they do block, then we play Ryuma. If they don't block, we play Borsellino. But we're not going to work their life at this point. We're going to try to remove as much as we can. Or if they counter out here, then we'll play Ryuma. We have options, is what I'm saying. Oh, yes. Oh, they fell for our trap. Too bad that we can't attack with her, but it's whatever. Oh no! No! Karubi, or not Karubi, Chu got me. Sure. There's no target, sadly. But they get to Arlong this turn, so let's see what they do with Arlong. Luckily, again, all of our removal really works extremely well here. Smoothie, I guess I'm okay with Smoothie. You know, add a card for the top of body or deck to your hand. Like, that's good value for them. I think we'll take one more hit here, but we're going to stop trying to take hits from here on out. I'm really just trying to pull, like, Gecko Moria, and hopefully we pull Doflamingo, actually, soon. We didn't start with any searchers, and that's fine, but the way this is panning out is also okay for us. So we've got options here. Let's go ahead and I think we just go for the Smoothie. Generally, like, I'm not gonna concern myself too much with this card, but it really is the best target amongst these options. So we'll work that down. We can use our other Ryuma at this point, but I would really like to force them to lose cards from their hand if we can. Sadly, we don't have another way to tap that chew down, so we're just gonna try just a vanilla attack, I think. See what happens. Right, because, you know, there's two things happening here when you rest something down. You can force bad counters from our opponents like we just did there with Cracker, or you can just straight up kill the thing. So from here, I think it's safer to just go this way. Right. Of course. And then we'll use Ryuma to kill the Smoothie, and then we'll play a Borsellino. And that's just gonna have to be how it is. But that's okay. We've got a lot of card advantage, and I think we have control of the board at this point. They could have like Horty Jones, whatever the big fish is named. I just went through that arc in the show. It's Hody Jones or Horty Jones? I feel like they call it Horty Jones in the English version. Oh, damn. Okay, so here I'm okay getting rid of Brand New. And yeah, we'll go from there. Honestly, we could kill Kikinojo, but like the way we have it on board, we could pretty much kill them, I'm sure, on this crackback coming up. Are you gonna play a card from your hand, or are you not gonna play a card from your hand? Because it's unless it's a Sanji or like a Brûlée, it wouldn't really make sense, right? So they could play a blocker here. Okay, killer's fine, I guess. We're gonna use Suru here to keep this. Actually, it's a lie. Virgo. We're gonna use Virgo here. Not a fan of Virgo. So, you know, there aren't too many turns left in this game, so it wouldn't hurt to just have more options in our hand. So this doesn't really seem like a bad play to me. I'll just let the life come to me. There's two ways we could play this. We could ditch the Suru, or dip it, or take the life and see what we get. No matter what, I feel like we're just going wide and swinging in, so if we somehow fail, then we want the life, but we'll take the life. No trigger. Okay. This should be the last rotation. Let's see if they play a Brûlé. A Brûlé would really muck things up for us. Any trigger blocker here would muck things up for us. Okay. So they're holding a lot of Dawn. The first thing we should do is force that Dawn out of their hand. So what we could do is just go vanilla 5k here to push things. They might have a 2-cost event. I don't know many Arlongs that do run 2-cost events, but we can go up to 9 here, 9 here. That's 3, 6 Dawn, 4 more Dawn to get to 9k here and be able to swing 9k all around. Why don't we just do a vanilla attack first? Hopefully this doesn't effectively kill one of our things. That would really suck. But this way they're forced to have a solution in hand, right? If they get a trigger playable blocker, good on them. We'll go ahead and just swing this 9k. Okay. Let's kill that guy. All right, so this makes this play a little bit easier for us. We're just gonna go all in here. If they have an event to stop me, then they have an event to stop me, and that's okay. But I don't know what that would be. Cool, we did it. And we had Rocinante in hand. So that was a pretty decent illustration of what this deck can do. So I realized that Arlong matchup was maybe not what you were looking for, and that's okay. I want to start up at least one more game so we can get a potential meta matchup in the works here and see how Perona plays against something like a Sakazuki, a Katakuri, the Gecko Moria. As a matter of fact, that will be really damning. Okay, I could do Red Purple Law. This is a good win. I honestly hate this deck, so it'll be fun to play against it. Expect all of our stuff to be gone 100% of the time and not in our grave. So this is a really bad matchup, but this will be fun to see how this plays out. This is not a bad starting hand. We don't have any playables on turn 1, but that's more or less okay. We can bin this though and try to find something a little bit better. We actually do like this. So both the Anupe and the brand new are going to give us things to play out of our trash later off of Gecko Moria if we happen to pull into one, because again, Red Purple Law is not going to let us see anything from our trash, sadly. But I think between the two options here, I actually like the brand new a little bit better. So we'll go with the brand new to start. Oh boy, that might have been a mistake. So we have Gecko, Doflamingo, and Virgo. Damn. It's okay, it's okay. It's fine. Anupe would have been better. Anupe would have been better, but we wouldn't have known that. Sure, we'll take this hit. And then you can do the, no thing, not this early. Okay, we've got Doflamingo for later. That's good. We like to see that. Let's go ahead and just do the brand new thing. Yes, we could Kuzan here. Yes, it's not a bad idea, but this is fine. We'll just get these attacks in. We'll play via Anupe. We'll draw 2. Ooh, okay. Let's trash probably our 0-cost event in this instant. We don't need it quite yet. And Kuzan will be a really fun play off of Gecko, but we don't have that lined up for us. Ryuma is definitely going to be our next play, and I would personally like to keep it and X-Drake if possible to remove some of their board, both if possible. Makino is probably fine to get rid of because we've got a lot of 2k counters in hand, and generally Red Purple Law isn't trying to swing that much power at us. I think we can probably get rid of the Kuzan though comfortably. All right, we put our weenies down. We're gonna let them work on this board. Red Purple Law uses a lot of negative power effects to like just make the most out of their remove Dawn and bin a thing. So we're not really forcing them to leverage any of those yet, but we will later. We can probably get whatever their board is down to level 0. So Makino will be great to see off of Gecko Moria. Ooh, that was a nice double header for us. We want to start working their board and probably don't want to work Kamazo unless we have to. Let's see what we can do though. So Kamazo is a really good counter to our setup. So I kind of want to try to kill her first. So we'll work her down. We can go 2K with brand new into it and still have 4 Dawn open. Unfortunately, Ryuma will die in this instance, but that's just going to have to be what it is. Let's do this. Let's try this out. We could have just as easily used Perona here. Okay, I know. And it's the same thing as like a 2-for-1 in this situation, right? Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Let's see here. If we just do 2 Dawn and swing at Kamazo, they'll have to let Kamazo go, and then they'll get rid of our brand new, and we can play Rocinante. We could have also just done Rocinante and Ryuma. I realize this now, and that's on me. Let's do the Perona thing, though. Let's just commit and let them kill brand new. I'm okay with this trade. I approve this trade. Unless they don't want it to die. Who knows? They might just ditch their whole hand. Okay, okay. Yeah, Rocinante is it. And of course, they can get rid of Rocinante in a number of ways, and that's just going to have to be okay. There's the Kamazo. Ooh, 2K counter, you say. I'll get rid of the Virgo in this instance. And I'll get rid of the Suru in this instance. Luckily, like we don't need the level reducers necessarily out of Suru for this matchup because much of Law's setup is super low leveled, so we can get rid of those comfortably. We do want to try to remove much of their board here, though. So this is an 8 Dawn turn. We've got play options. I think what we want to do to start is push this guy and then kill the Kamazo if possible. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We've got 6 Dawn if we want to do Ryuma and Rocinante. And that leaves us with 2 Dawn to attack with other things. So we can push the brand new into the Shachi and Penguin as well. So sort of like what we did earlier against the Kamazo. Or, let's do this first. Maybe we just force the Kamazo. I'd like to use Ryuma on the Penguin if we can. But basically, we're going to... man, that sucks. Okay. But basically, we're going to try to... This is very much an attrition game against Red-Purple Law. We're going to try to get them to remove as much of their board as possible. They don't want a -1 Dawn to kill my brand new? Because that happened, though, we can comfortably do this and just play brand new instead. And I'm fine with that. Mind you, because he... bottoms a character, this gets around the KO aspect of Rocinante. So I don't really want to play Rocinante until we need a blocker, and I don't see us actively needing a blocker yet. Here, though, man, between these options, we've got some good ones. I don't really want Kuzan for this matchup, but I could use the Borsellino as a counter option, so we'll take that as a counter option for us. Ooh. That was the play. Sure. Oh, more counter power. Okay. More counter power. Ooh, that blocker might have been good. We'll see. We're gonna kill the girl here though. But let's start by doing Perona into this first. It's a pretty comfortable play. That's good. That's good. Yes. Yes. So there are plenty of play options here. We don't really need to play the Daffy. We can just play 2 blockers. We could play 1, 2, 3 blockers if we really wanted to and be super comfortable. So maybe we do that. Honestly, though, I think we do Borsellino, and swing with a brand new as well. Man, they're really questioning whether they dropped that last Otama. That was interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and do brand new, and double the Borsellino, double the fun. Okay. Let's do... Because the thing is, they can bottom 1 for sure. So we want 2 of these minimally. We could do... That's the thing, though. Like, we've got options here. We can do like this as well, and then play our Rocinante blocker. I kind of like that as an option instead. Just to pressure them a little bit more. So they need 2 removal things now to attack us and get us to where we would be lethal for next turn. So this is fine. You gonna Dawn up? They sort of sped through that turn. I hope they're comfortable with their choices there. I think we keep the Borsellino. I think. We have a way to tap down their blocker. I think we probably just pressure them for game, though, next turn. So there's no reason, really, to keep any of this. We could remove a threat if we need to. I don't know. The double blocker is nice, though. Let's just get rid of the... Let's get rid of the Borsellino. At this point, I don't see us going another round, legitimately, so it doesn't hurt to take the life, but I will counter out, just trying to be a good player. So you'll notice we've got plenty of play options here. We could tap down the, if we want to play it super safe, we could tap down the Eustace Kid and then just play Flamingo. But it does make a lot more sense for us to just tap down the Eustace Kid. Oh, I'm sorry. Tap down the Eustace Kid off of Suru, and then go ahead and go for game instead. And the best way to go about this is probably to start like vanilla on the brand news and then go from there. We just need to get 1 hit in. They've got a lot of cards in hand though, so we need to pressure them just a little bit. I'm going to do these 2 vanilla for 5, and then we can push these higher, right? Because they only have 3 cards in hand. So 1, 2. And yes, we could go, you know, we can go 7 here, 7 and 7. Maybe that's the best option. I don't really want to fling the Rocinante if I don't have to. And obviously if they take this and no triggers, we can just do this. And then we can push. We could push with our last one. But no, they just didn't have it. So they had 1 2K counter. Man, that's a 2, that Kamazo's a 2K counter as well. But that was fun. This is usually a bad matchup, as there's a lot of removal both ways, but we did it. If there are any other leaders you'd like to see covered for a deck profile and gameplay session here on the channel, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll take those thoughts into consideration. I hope you enjoyed this Perona guide. Do watch my previous Gecko Moria guide. I absolutely love that leader, and that is the one I've been playing the most, despite my love for Sakazuki still as well. But Perona's good. The Navy Donquixote Pirates package is what I recommend. But if you use something else, let us know in the comment section down below. Again, my name is Patrick Marlett, your local game guy, and for more news and updates on your favorite TCGs, subscribe to LGG, and feel free to leave this video with a like so that other gamers can find this same guide. Thank you so much.